This is a fictional romantic story created for entertainment purposes only. I had worked for him for 2 years without him ever really seeing me, just the quiet girl who organized his life, who anticipated his needs before he knew them himself. But that night when the rain trapped us in his office and he finally looked at me, really looked at me, everything changed. He kissed me like I was oxygen and he was drowning, and when he pulled back, something shifted in his eyes, something possessive, something permanent. What he whispered next made my heart stop completely. Before we dive in, I need your help. We're working toward 10,000 subscribers and every single one matters. So if you enjoy this story, please hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below. It means everything to know you're out there. Now, let me tell you how I went from being invisible to becoming the one thing he refused to live without. I had always been the kind of person people overlooked. Not in a tragic way, not in a way that made me bitter. I had simply learned early in life that some people were meant to shine in the spotlight and others were meant to keep the world running smoothly from the shadows. I was a shadow person, always had been. My voice was soft, my presence was quiet. I wore muted colors and kept my head down and did my job with a precision that most people never noticed, because when you do something perfectly, no one realizes how hard you work to make it look effortless. For 2 years, I had been Alexander Drummond's executive secretary. 2 years of scheduling his meetings, managing his correspondence, fielding calls from people far more important than me. 2 years of watching him command boardrooms with a single look, of seeing powerful men defer to his judgment, of witnessing the way he moved through the world like he owned it. Because, in many ways, he did. Drummond Industries was one of the largest private equity firms on the eastern seaboard. Alexander had built it from nothing, turning a small investment fund into an empire through sheer force of will and a ruthlessness that made his competitors afraid to even speak his name. He was brilliant, he was intimidating, he was devastatingly handsome in a way that made my stomach flip every time he walked past my desk. And he had absolutely no idea I existed. Oh, he knew my name, he knew I was competent. He occasionally nodded in my direction or muttered a distracted thank you when I placed his coffee exactly where he liked it, black with 1 sugar, temperature precisely between hot and scalding. But he didn't see me, not really. I was furniture to him, a particularly efficient piece of office equipment that happened to have a pulse. I had made my peace with that. Or at least I thought I had. The night everything changed started like any other late evening at the office. A major acquisition was closing, and Alexander had been in meetings since 7 in the morning. I had stayed, of course. I always stayed when he needed me, even if he never noticed. By 9 o'clock, the building was nearly empty. The cleaning staff had come and gone. The security guards made their rounds with flashlights that swept past the windows like lazy searchlights. And the storm had rolled in. I heard the first crack of thunder while I was organizing files in the outer office. The sound made me jump, my heart racing in that irrational way it always did during storms. I had been afraid of thunder since I was a child, something about the way it shook the world without warning. Rain began hammering against the windows, sheets of water so thick I could barely see the city lights beyond. The wind howled around the building's corners, and I shivered despite the climate-controlled air. My phone buzzed, a weather alert, flash flood warnings, roads closed, public transportation suspended. I stared at the screen, my stomach sinking. I lived 45 minutes away by train. If the subways were down, I had no way home. The door to Alexander's private office opened, and I quickly schooled my expression into its usual calm mask. "Miss Chen." His voice was deep, authoritative, the kind of voice that made people listen whether they wanted to or not. I looked up to find him standing in the doorway, his suit jacket discarded, his tie loosened, his dark hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it during the endless calls. He looked tired, he looked frustrated, he looked absolutely beautiful, and I hated myself a little for noticing. "Mr. Drummond," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. It was always like this when he addressed me directly. My vocal cords seemed to shrink, my words becoming smaller, softer. "Is there something you need?" "The Harrington contracts, I need them reviewed again." Before tomorrow's signing. They're already on your desk. I flagged the sections your legal team had concerns about. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or perhaps just acknowledgement that I had anticipated his needs as I always did. Good, he paused, his gaze moving past me to the windows, where lightning illuminated the sky in brilliant flashes. Nasty storm. Yes, sir. You should head home, it's late. I hesitated, my fingers tightening on the folder in my hands. The trains are suspended, flash flooding. His brow furrowed. You don't have a car? No, sir, I take public transportation. For a long moment he just looked at me, really looked in a way he never had before. I felt pinned by that gaze, examined, catalogued. It made my cheeks flush and my heart race, and I desperately hoped the dim lighting would hide both reactions. You can't stay here all night, he said finally. I'll manage, there's a couch in the break room. Once the storm passes, I can find a way home. Don't be ridiculous, his tone sharpened with something that almost sounded like concern. I have a car service, I'll have them take you home. Mr. Drummond, I couldn't possibly. It's not a suggestion, Miss Chen. I fell silent. I had learned long ago not to argue with Alexander Drummond when he used that particular tone. He pulled out his phone, dialing quickly. I watched him pace as he spoke to someone on the other end, his free hand gesturing with barely contained frustration. When he hung up, his expression was thunderous. The roads are impassable, they can't get through. It's fine, I said quickly. Really, I don't mind staying. I mind, he ran a hand through his hair again, that frustrated gesture I had seen 1,000 times. I have a guest room at my apartment, you'll stay there tonight. My heart stopped, actually stopped, or at least it felt that way. I couldn't. Miss Chen, he fixed me with that piercing gaze, the one that made billion-dollar deals happen with a single look. The company has a duty of care to its employees. I'm not leaving you stranded in an empty office building during a dangerous storm. Pack whatever you need, we're leaving. I wanted to argue. I wanted to insist that I was fine, that I didn't need his charity, that the last thing in the world I could handle was spending the night anywhere near Alexander Drummond. But my voice, as always, failed. 20 minutes later, I found myself in the back of his private car, watching the storm rage beyond the tinted windows, while the most intimidating man I had ever met sat mere inches away. Alexander's apartment was exactly what I should have expected, and yet nothing I was prepared for. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the storm-shrouded skyline, lightning illuminating the space in dramatic flashes. The decor was masculine and expensive, all dark leather and polished wood and artwork that probably cost more than I would earn in a lifetime. I stood in the entryway, clutching my bag like a lifeline, feeling more out of place than I ever had in my entire life. Make yourself comfortable, Alexander said, moving toward what I assumed was the kitchen. I'll find something for you to sleep in. Mr. Drummond, really this is too much, I can just... Alexander. I blinked, I'm sorry. He turned, that intense gaze finding mine across the vast living space. We're not in the office, call me Alexander. My mouth opened and closed, I literally could not make myself say his first name. It felt too intimate, too familiar, too much like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I'll try, I managed weakly. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. There's wine in the refrigerator, help yourself, I'll be back in a moment. He disappeared down a hallway, and I was left alone in his living room, feeling like I had somehow stumbled into an alternate dimension where none of the usual rules applied. I didn't help myself to whine. Instead, I drifted toward the windows, watching the storm paint the city in shades of gray and white. The thunder was muffled here, high above the streets, but I still flinched with each rumble. You're afraid of storms. I spun around to find Alexander standing behind me, having moved so silently I hadn't heard him approach. He had changed into more casual clothes, dark pants and a gray sweater that somehow made him look even more handsome. In his hands he held a folded shirt and what appeared to be drawstring pants. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You're trembling." I looked down at my hands, surprised to find he was right. I hadn't even noticed. "Here," he handed me the clothes. "The guest room is down the hall's second door on the left. The bathroom is attached. Take your time." "Thank you," I whispered, taking the offerings. His fingers brushed mine in the exchange, and I felt that brief contact like an electric shock, heat spreading from the point of connection all the way to my core. I fled to the guest room before I could embarrass myself further. The room was beautiful, of course. A massive bed with crisp white linens, more of those stunning windows, an ensuite bathroom with marble counters, and a shower that probably had more settings than my entire apartment. I changed quickly, trying not to think about the fact that I was wearing Alexander Drummond's clothes. The shirt was obviously his, soft cotton that smelled faintly of his cologne. It hung nearly to my knees, making me feel even smaller than usual. When I emerged, I found him in the living room, 2 glasses of wine poured, the city lights glittering beyond the windows despite the rain that continued to fall. "Better?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. He was sitting on the leather sofa, relaxed in a way I had never seen him at the office. Without the armor of his suit and tie, he looked almost approachable, almost human. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the space beside him. "You look like you're about to bolt." "I'm sorry, I'm not used to this." "To what?" "To being near you, to being seen by you, to wearing your clothes while your scent surrounds me and your voice makes my heart race." "To being in someone's home," I said instead, "my employer's home." His mouth curved slightly. "You can relax, Miss Chen, I don't bite." I perched on the edge of the sofa, keeping as much distance between us as politely possible. He handed me a glass of wine, and I took a sip just to have something to do with my trembling hands. 2 years, he said suddenly. I looked up, confused. "I'm sorry." "You've worked for me for 2 years. His eyes were on my face, studying me with an intensity that made me want to disappear into the cushions. "In all that time, I don't think I've ever heard you speak above a whisper." My cheeks flushed. "I'm not very loud." "No, you're not." He paused, taking a sip of his own wine. "You're the most efficient secretary I've ever had. You anticipate my needs before I know them myself. You handle problems I never even hear about. My entire professional life runs smoothly because of you, and I've barely acknowledged your existence." I didn't know what to say. The wine trembled in my glass. "Why do you stay?" he asked. "I'm sorry." "With your skills, you could work anywhere, make more money, have a more visible role. Why do you stay in a position where you're essentially invisible?" "Because I get to see you every day. Because being near you, even when you don't notice me, is better than being anywhere else in the world." "I like my job," I said quietly. "I'm good at it, and I don't need to be visible to know I'm making a difference." Something shifted in his expression, something warm and curious and dangerously close to interest. "Remarkable," he murmured, almost to himself. "What is?" You're remarkable, Miss Chen, and I'm sorry it's taken me 2 years to notice." The thunder crashed outside and I jumped, sloshing wine onto my hand. Before I could react, Alexander was there, taking the glass from my fingers, producing a napkin from somewhere, his hands gentle as they cleaned the wine from my skin. "You really are afraid," he said softly, and there was something in his voice I had never heard before. Tenderness, concern. "Since I was a child," I admitted, my voice barely audible, "I know it's irrational." "Fear isn't rational, it doesn't have to be." His hand was still on mine, his thumb tracing small circles on my wrist. "Is there anything that helps?" "You being near you, your voice, your presence, your impossible warmth." "Distraction," I whispered, focusing on something else. His eyes met mine, and suddenly the air between us felt charged with something far more dangerous than lightning. "I can provide a distraction," he said, and his voice had dropped to something low and intimate that sent shivers down my spine. I should have pulled away. Every rational thought in my head screamed that this was a mistake, that he was my boss, that tomorrow we would have to face each other in the office and pretend none of this had happened. But Alexander Drummond was looking at me like I was something precious, like I was something he wanted, and after 2 years of being invisible, the feeling was intoxicating. "Miss Chen," he murmured, and his hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I'm going to kiss you now. If you don't want that, tell me to stop." "Stop, say stop. This is insane. This is your boss. This is." "Sophia," I breathed instead. "My name is Sophia." His smile was slow and beautiful and utterly devastating. "Sophia," he repeated, and my name in his voice was the most perfect sound I had ever heard. Beautiful. Then his lips were on mine, and the world fell away. He kissed me like I was precious and fragile, like I might shatter if he pressed too hard. But he also kissed me like he was starving, like he had been waiting for this moment without knowing it, like I was everything he needed and hadn't known he was missing. My hands found his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath the soft sweater. His heart was racing as fast as mine, and somehow that knowledge made me braver. I leaned into him, deepening the kiss, and the sound he made was low and hungry and perfect. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, his hands still framing my face, his eyes closed like he was savoring the moment. "I should apologize," he said, his voice rough. "Please don't." His eyes opened, meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You don't understand." His thumb traced my lower lip, swollen from his kiss. "I've spent 2 years treating you like furniture, and now I've kissed you, and He stopped, something shifting in his expression, something powerful and possessive that sent heat pooling in my belly. "I can't let you go." "What?" "I can't." His hands tightened on my face, not painful but firm, like he was afraid I might disappear. "I don't know what this is, Sophia. I don't know what's happening. But the thought of you walking out of this apartment tomorrow and going back to being just my secretary, the thought of you meeting someone else, of anyone else touching you, looking at you." His jaw clenched, and I saw something almost desperate in his eyes. "I know I have no right, I know I've given you no reason to care about what I want, but I need you to know that something just changed. Right now, when I kissed you, something fundamental shifted inside me, and I don't know how to undo it. I don't know if I want to." I stared at him, speechless. This powerful man, this commanding presence who made the world bow to his will, was looking at me like I held his fate in my hands. "I've watched you," I whispered, and the confession felt like stepping off a cliff. "For 2 years I've watched you. I've memorized the way you take your coffee and the sound of your voice when you're frustrated, and the way you run your hands through your hair when you're thinking." His breath caught. "I know you're brilliant," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I know you're demanding and difficult and that everyone is afraid of you, but I've also seen you work until midnight to save a deal that would protect 1,000 jobs. I've seen you quietly pay for an employee's medical bills when you thought no one was looking. I've seen the man behind the reputation, and I stopped, suddenly terrified. "And you what?" he prompted, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I've been falling for you since the day I started. I just never thought you'd ever see me." For a long moment he was silent. Thunder rolled outside, but I barely noticed. All I could see was his face, the storm in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. Then he kissed me again. This time there was nothing gentle about it. He pulled me onto his lap, his hands sliding into my hair, his mouth demanding and possessive. I gasped against him, overwhelmed by sensation, by the feeling of finally being exactly where I wanted to be. "I see you now," he growled against my lips. "I see you, Sophia, and I'm never looking away again." I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the distant sound of the city coming to life below. For a moment I didn't remember where I was. Then the memories crashed over me. The storm, the kiss, Alexander's hands in my hair, and his voice rough with desire and something deeper. We hadn't done more than kiss. He had pulled back with a restraint that seemed to cost him, insisting that I deserved better than a rushed encounter born of adrenaline and proximity. He had walked me to the guest room, pressed one last devastating kiss to my forehead, and left me alone with my racing heart and spinning thoughts. Now, in the cold light of morning, reality came flooding back. He was my boss, I was his secretary. What had happened last night was insane, impulsive, and probably a massive mistake that would cost me everything. I dressed quickly in my clothes from yesterday, finger-combing my hair into something presentable, steeling myself for the awkward conversation that was surely coming. When I emerged from the guest room, I found Alexander in the kitchen, looking unfairly handsome in another casual outfit. He was making coffee, and the domestic normalcy of the scene was so jarring I stopped in my tracks. "Good morning," he said, his voice warm. "How did you sleep?" "Fine," I whispered. "I should go. The trains are probably running again and I need to change before work and—" "Sophia." My name in his mouth stopped me cold. He moved toward me with that predatory grace, and I was suddenly very aware of how rumpled I looked, how small and ordinary I was compared to the polished women who usually moved in his world. "About last night," I started, preparing my apology, my resignation if necessary. "I meant every word." I blinked. "What?" "Last night," he stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat of his body. I wasn't caught up in the moment, I wasn't confused, I meant every single word, and I'm not taking any of it back. "But I'm your secretary." "You were my secretary." His hand came up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "As of this morning, you're being promoted to a position that doesn't report directly to me. HR will have the paperwork ready by noon." "You can't just—" "I can and I am." His eyes were intense, unyielding, because I refused to let professional protocol stand between me and the first woman who's made me feel something real in longer than I can remember. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. "This is crazy," I whispered. "Probably. We barely know each other." "Then we'll learn." His hands found my waist, drawing me closer. "I know you're scared, I know this is fast, but I also know that I spent 2 years blind to the most remarkable woman I've ever met, and I'm not wasting another moment." "Alexander." "Say yes." His forehead rested against mine, his breath warm on my face. "Say yes to dinner. Say yes to letting me get to know you properly. Say yes to giving this a chance." I thought about my quiet life, my safe routines, my invisible existence that had kept me protected but never truly happy. Then I thought about his kiss, his hands, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. "Yes," I breathed. His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face into something so beautiful it hurt to look at. "Good," he murmured, because I wasn't going to take no for an answer. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. True to his word, Alexander had me transferred to a strategic planning role that utilized my organizational skills while removing me from his direct supervision. The official announcement was carefully worded to avoid any hint of impropriety, though I suspected the entire office was buzzing with speculation anyway. I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what people thought. Because every evening Alexander Drummond was waiting for me, dinners at restaurants I had only ever read about, long walks through the city as he told me about his childhood, his dreams, his fears, quiet nights in his penthouse where he held me like I was precious and kissed me like I was oxygen. He was patient with my shyness, never pushing me to speak louder or be someone I wasn't. Instead, he learned to read my silences, to understand the things I said without words. "You're thinking too hard," he murmured one evening, as we sat on his balcony watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold. "How do you know?" "Your left eyebrow does this little furrow when you're overthinking." His finger traced the spot, making me shiver. "Tell me." "I keep waiting for this to feel real," I admitted, "for it to stop feeling like a dream I'm going to wake up from." He pulled me closer, settling me against his chest. "I used to think I had everything," he said quietly. "Money, power, success, but I was empty, Sophia. I was going through the motions, building an empire and feeling absolutely nothing." His hand found mine, interlacing our fingers. "Then you collapsed in my office during that storm, and suddenly I could breathe again. Suddenly everything had color and meaning. Suddenly I understood what I had been missing." "I didn't collapse, I just stayed late." "You know what I mean." He pressed a kiss to my hair. You brought me back to life, and I'm not letting that go. I'm not letting you go, ever." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel safe, cherished, seen. "I don't want you to let me go," I whispered. His arms tightened around me. "Good, because you're stuck with me now, Sophia Chen, for as long as you'll have me." "What if I want forever?" The question slipped out before I could stop it, bold in a way I never was. I felt his breath catch, his body going still. Then he was turning me in his arms, cupping my face, looking at me with an intensity that stole my breath. "Then forever is what you'll get." 3 months into our relationship, Alexander planned a surprise. He told me to dress up, gave me no other information, and sent a car to pick me up from my apartment. The driver was frustratingly silent about our destination, and I spent the entire ride nervous and curious in equal measure. When the car stopped, I found myself in front of the building where I had first met Alexander, the office tower where I had spent 2 years being invisible. "What are we doing here?" I asked as Alexander helped me from the car, looking devastating in a perfectly tailored suit. "You'll say." He led me through the empty lobby, past security guards who nodded respectfully, into the elevator that climbed to the very top floor, his private office, the place where everything had started. The door opened and I gasped. The entire space had been transformed. Candles flickered on every surface. Flowers, soft white roses, filled the room with their delicate scent. A table for two had been set up by the windows, overlooking the city lights that stretched to the horizon. "Alexander," I breathed, "what is this?" He took my hand, leading me into the transformed space. "This is where I first noticed you were gone." I looked at him, confused. "What?" 3 months ago, when you were promoted, I came into my office expecting to find everything running perfectly, the way it always did when you were here. Instead, nothing was where it should be. My coffee was wrong, my schedule was a mess, my new assistant couldn't find anything. He stopped by the windows, turning to face me. I spent the entire day frustrated and I couldn't figure out why. Then I realized I wasn't frustrated about the inefficiency. I was frustrated because I missed you. I missed your quiet presence, your soft voice, the way you made everything better without ever asking for recognition. My eyes were stinging with tears I refused to let fall. That night I went home to my empty penthouse and I understood something I should have realized long before. He reached into his jacket pocket. I understood that I was in love with you, that I had probably been in love with you for longer than I knew, and that I never wanted to spend another day of my life without you. He dropped to one knee. My hands flew to my mouth, a sob escaping despite my best efforts. "Sophia Chen," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "you came into my life quietly. You made yourself indispensable without ever asking for anything in return. You saw me, really saw me, when everyone else just saw the power and the reputation." He opened the box in his hand, revealing a ring that caught the candlelight and scattered it into 1,000 brilliant sparks. "I know I don't deserve you. I know I spent 2 years blind to the treasure right in front of me. But I'm asking anyway, because I love you more than I knew I was capable of loving anyone." Tears were streaming down my face now, and I didn't care. "Will you marry me?" The word that came out of my mouth wasn't a whisper. For the first time in my life, my voice was strong and clear. "Yes." He was on his feet in an instant, the ring sliding onto my finger, his arms wrapping around me so tightly I could barely breathe. His mouth found mine, and this kiss was different from all the others. It was a promise, a vow, a declaration that we belonged to each other now and forever. "I love you," I said against his lips. "I love you so much." "I love you more." He pulled back, his hands framing my face, his eyes shining with emotion I had never seen from this controlled, powerful man. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse, watching the city wake up below. My left hand rested on the glass, the diamond on my finger catching the early morning light. Behind me, I heard the bedroom door open. "You're up early." Alexander's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on top of my head. He was warm and solid in mine, and even after a year of marriage, the reality of it still sometimes took my breath away. Couldn't sleep, I admitted, too excited. His hand slid down to rest on my stomach, which had just begun to curve with new life. How are you feeling? Good, happy, I turned in his arms, looking up at his face, complete. He kissed me softly, tenderly, with all the love I had once been so afraid to hope for. I was going through old files yesterday, he said. I found your original job application. Oh no. Oh yes, his smile was teasing. You were so formal, so professional, no indication that you were about to completely destroy my carefully ordered life. Destroy might be a strong word. It's the right word. He pulled me closer. You destroyed the man I was, the cold, isolated workaholic who thought success was the only thing that mattered. You destroyed him and built someone better in his place. I didn't do anything. You were always this man. You just needed someone to see it. And you saw it. His forehead rested against mine. From the very beginning you saw me, the real me, and you loved me anyway. I love you because of who you are, not anyway. His kiss was deep and thorough and full of promise. Do you remember that night, he asked when we finally broke apart, the storm? I remember being terrified of the thunder, of being in your apartment, of how much I wanted you. I remember kissing you and feeling my entire world shift. His hands cupped my face. I remember knowing in that exact moment that I could never let you go, that you were mine and I was yours and nothing would ever change that. Nothing has changed it. Nothing ever will. We stood there in the early morning light, wrapped in each other, the city spreading out below us like a kingdom. I thought about the shy, invisible girl who had walked into his office 2.5 years ago, expecting nothing, hoping for nothing. I thought about how one storm, one night, one kiss had changed everything. Alexander Drummond had been the most intimidating man I had ever met, cold, powerful, untouchable, and now he was my husband, the father of my child, the center of my entire world. I love you, I whispered. I love you more. His hand covered mine on my stomach, both of you. The city continued to wake below us, millions of people starting their days, living their lives, never knowing that up here, in this penthouse, 2 people had found something extraordinary. He had kissed his shy secretary and realized he could never let her go. And she had let herself be held by a man who saw her, really saw her, for the first time in her life. Sometimes the greatest love stories start in the quietest ways, with a storm, a stranded employee, and a kiss that changed everything. So that's my story, from invisible secretary to the wife of the man I thought would never notice me. I want to hear from you now. Do you think Alexander's sudden realization was genuine, or should he have noticed Sophia sooner? Is there something romantic about being seen after feeling invisible, or does it take too long to appreciate what's right in front of us? Have you ever felt invisible to someone only to have them suddenly see you? How did it change things between you? And what about Sophia's choice to stay quiet for 2 years? Watching and waiting, was that patience or fear? Would you have done the same, or would you have spoken up sooner? Drop your answers in the comments. I read every single one and I love knowing what you think. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the tension building between Sophia and Alexander, if you understood why she said yes when he finally saw her, please hit that subscribe button. We're building something special here, and every subscriber helps us create more stories like this. Also, let me know, do you believe in love that starts slow and builds over time? Or do you think the instant connection moments, like that kiss during the storm, are what really matter? And here's something I've been thinking about. Alexander said he could never let her go after just one kiss. Some people might call that intense, others might call it romantic. What's your take? Where's the line between passionate love and overwhelming intensity? Share your thoughts below. I want to know everything. The stories you relate to, the moments that made your heart race, the questions this story left you with. If you enjoyed this journey from invisible to irreplaceable, please like this video. It helps more people find these stories and lets me know you want more. And seriously, subscribe if you haven't already. I have so many more stories to share, so many more romances to explore, so many more moments where love changes everything. Thank you for listening, thank you for being here, thank you for letting me share this story with you. Until next time, remember, sometimes the person who seems impossible to reach is just waiting for someone brave enough to stay, and sometimes being quiet isn't weakness, it's patience, it's strength, it's waiting for the right moment to finally be seen. Now go down to those comments and tell me what you really think. I'm ready for all of it.